They've always said, God, I hate what you do. Please stop. So, no, it's wonderful.
She's a truly nice person, which is very shocking because a lot of times someone who's accomplished as much as you have isn't always as friendly. So it's so awesome to meet someone that is genuinely a good person. So I hope everyone agrees with me. So several films you've worked on, Labyrinth, we just saw Dark Crystal. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us about the Dark Crystal? Anything, let's say, a moment maybe that caused some pain or something that was really hard to do?
Actually, there were quite a few scenes that were hard to do because the puppets were in situations that were really cramped for a lot of the time. And it always took at least two of us. Jim was the main puppeteer. I usually worked the eyes, and there was another person doing the other hand. So there were 3 or 4 of us all crammed into. I think one of the hardest ones was when he's climbing up the big chasm thing. So it was really hot, and it wasn't fun, and it took a long time, and none of us liked it. But I mean, all of the puppets were difficult, and they all took a lot of people. But because the Gelflings were small, we had to hide more. There wasn't any place for us to be, so we were always just either crouched or lying on our backs, or someplace just trying to stay out of the way, and not always succeeding. But yeah, for the most part, it was fun. It was just very tiring, but really exciting. And we knew at the time when we were working on it that it was exciting. And luckily we all got along really well. Jim Henson was wonderful because he was very even-tempered. He never lost his temper. So it's very easy to work with him. You just wanted to keep going, and you wanted to do what he asked. And that was really important. So we all did our best.
It's directed by Women Month. We're celebrating female creators from September 1st through 14th. And you said something to me earlier that the film industry in general has very few women that work in it. But at Jim Henson, you were telling me that it was half and half. And
yeah, I think I was very lucky. The Henson organization was wonderful because they always had women in all aspects of that company. There were women puppeteers, there were women who built the puppets, who wrote the scripts, and it was very even. They were very, very even-handed about who they used. They used people because they were talented, not because they were men, not because they were famous. They used us because we were good at what we did, I think. But I will say that when I was lent out, or do you want me to talk about that later? I'll talk about it now. When I was okay, when I was lent out from working on Dark Crystal to work on The Empire Strikes Back, that was very different because that was really the film industry and in a different way, much more traditional. And I was the only woman working in that department. I came into a department of all men. There were women in the makeup department, but no sculptors, as far as I know. Certainly none that were around me. No fabricators. So it was me, and then Kathy Mullen, who was one of the other puppeteers on it, who felt very, I don't know, lucky, I suppose, and also a little lonely.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about this picture?
Okay, so this was how many people it took to make one small hand puppet work. So that's Frank at the front, Kathy Mullen there. I'm at the very back, moving the ears. This is Dave Barclay in the middle, who was making the eyes blink. Kathy was doing the other arm. We spent lots and lots of time under that set. Again, all huddled up in the dark, and it was built. That was the Dagobah planet, and it was built on a platform up above the ground. And the electricians and the people working on it took great pleasure in telling us that it was the set that they'd used for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where all the snakes had been. And they kept saying, well, you know, we lost a lot of those snakes. We never found them. And we're sitting there in this little pool of light with this huge, vast darkness around us waiting to hear the rustle of the snakes, but we didn't.
That's awesome. So I'm going to try to go to another picture here. Tech problems. Does this go to another one? How about this? Okay. Sorry. Yes, there we go. There he is. All right, let's go view full. Full screen. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. I apologize, everyone. Yes. How about that? There we go. Is this a great picture? So, tell us a little bit about this picture.
We must have been in the workshop, Brian. We looked very worried. I don't know what we were looking at. We were probably looking at, I would think, maybe Jim and Kathy puppeteering the Gelflings just in the workshop to see what they looked like. And as you could tell, we were really worried about it.
We were looking at these pictures back at headquarters, the other festival volunteers, and we kind of had a bet of what you were thinking about. And the winner was that David Bowie was doing something like crazy with Toby or something, something like this. Sorry.
No, this is Dark Crystal. This is before David Bowie. That's another one. It's really the same sort of thing of just, and here we are with Jim.
Yes.
Looking happier. Obviously, that's when it was working a little bit better. But Jim used to come in and try on the puppet whenever he flew back and forth. He was doing a few different projects. So whenever he was in town, or in London where we were, he would come in and try on the puppet because we had to keep building mechanics into the head. We had to get, an eye blink and ears moving and different things. So that's a lot of stuff to go in with the hand. And his hand and Frank's hand are both very big. And for something the size of the Gelfling heads, which are quite small, it was really difficult. And you had to be very precise about how to get it to work with their hand inside and make it comfortable enough for them to work. At first, Frank was going to puppeteer Kira, and he really wanted to. So I guess it was because of his picky, but he really wanted to be the puppeteer for her. And he put his hand inside, it just kind of distorted everything. That's when we realized that we really had to have a woman's hand in something that size, because it just wasn't going to work otherwise. That's us now. Being happy in our home. We weren't allowed to take photos on The Empire Strikes Back, so there aren't very many production photos on that, at least not that I have access to. I don't know if they gave you any other ones or not.
Yeah, Lucasfilm was very gracious. They gave us 5 films of Yoda, and we can screen through them. It was amazing because normally when you get a picture, they'll send you like a 200K photo that you can't do anything with. But they literally went back and gave us like a 300 megabyte image. And if you actually look at the thing, you could see it was an old slide because it had which was great. So, I mean, I think that looking back, I think they maybe wished they had taken more photos. So.
But they were pretty secretive even then. It was a closed set most of the time. They didn't really allow people to watch what was going on. And I was just saying a little earlier at dinner that we who were working on it, never got to read the script, so we didn't really know. We knew just the parts that we were working on. We had no idea what the whole thing was going to be about. So that was one of the reasons we had no idea of how iconic Yoda was going to be. We didn't really know what his role would be in the whole thing. But even after seeing the film, we had no idea that he would become such an iconic figure.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how Yoda was created?
It started with production designs. I think Ralph McQuarrie was one of the people who did production drawings for Yoda. Stuart Freeborn was the head of the makeup department, and he started sculpting Yoda, and they weren't really quite happy. He was sculpting from the drawings and being really true to them, and it just wasn't working for people. Nobody felt any connection with him. And I was brought in, first of all, I was brought in to make a practice puppet for Frank Oz to just get to know the character. So I sculpted it out of a block of foam rubber, which you do with razor blades, scissors, and just turn it into a hand puppet that doesn't do anything except talk. You know, the eyes don't blink, nothing works. But it was the right size. I dyed it green, and everybody loved it, and they really loved the way it looked, and immediately people started responding to it and saying, well, we kind of want Yoda to look like this. So then they asked me to sculpt, and I started sculpting, and I sculpted really quickly, so I could just keep sculpting and sculpting and sculpting until I got something that both George and Frank and Jim all used to come through and say, oh, I like this, I don't like this. And usually they never agreed on anything, on any of the films, which was really hard because you try to please everybody. But they finally agreed that this was the look that they wanted. And then Stuart Freeborn, we took a cast of that and we liked that. But then he realized that we needed to change it a little bit to make the mechanics work better for the eye so it would blink more easily. So he resculpted. But it was my original sculpt from the designs that we had and developing it that made it work. And then I also helped, I sculpted the hands and feet, the other part that you see, and helped turn it into a hand puppet. And basically, it really was a hand puppet. Easy. Kathy Mullen also helped. We fitted it to Frank to make it work. Nothing, bicycle cables at the beginning. We were all attached to him just by bicycle cables. Sometimes they worked and sometimes they didn't.
How many hours did it take to, so you worked on the fabrication of it, but then you also stayed around to help maybe talk a little bit about how long it took to make him, and then how long for the scenes that he was in did you have to stay in those tight quarters with those 4 or 5 people, and did you like each other after? And,
We did. Well, the days when you film always start really early, so we were there, even if we weren't on set, we were there by probably 7 in the morning, I would think. And you don't leave till 7 at night, so they're long days. And that kind of day as well in the workshop. So all the days that we spent were long days. I was going back and forth working on that and working on the Dark Crystal, so I'd come and go depending on what they needed me to do. But when we filmed, because we were in a hole in this set, which was all around us, and once we were in there, they didn't really want to have to move us around or let us out. So we were in there for hours and hours and hours at a time. A lot, a long time on that set, or inside of that set, in very tight quarters. Frank Oz, I'm sure still is, a perfectionist, so we would do many, many, many takes of everything because he really wanted to make sure it was right. And he was absolutely correct to do that because the performance that he got turned out to be amazing, but at the time we're like, oh, Frank, come on, it's enough.
so no bathroom breaks, no food, or?
tea breaks every once in a while. Tea breaks, yeah, I mean, they'd let us out, but only every few hours. It was really important for them that we stayed there.
So, when was the first time you actually saw the movie?
Oh, I saw a crew screening of it just before it came out. And of course, I think to all of us, all we could see were the mistakes. And that was true of Dark Crystal as well. And the Muppet movie. You just, if you're a performer, if you're one of the people who made these things, all you can see are the things that went wrong. You know, you see a piece of gaffer tape, or you see something that shouldn't be there, and you forget to look at the whole thing. All you're doing is seeing what you did wrong. But seeing it again, I've seen it many times now, it's more impressive, as is Dark Crystal. Again, when you stop seeing the flaws and start seeing the thing as a whole, it becomes a wonderful experience. It took a few years before it could be wonderful.
What did Jim Henson think of the movie? Did he ever tell of Empire Strikes Back and your work on that? Did he talk to you ever about that, or?
I think he was just glad that all of us, I mean, the whole group of us were also working on the Dark Crystal. So I think he was just really glad that we'd had that experience, because then we could bring that and the knowledge that we had gained from doing that to the puppets and the filming for Dark Crystal. And I think that was really important. And I think he just thought it was really cool to see a puppet holding its own on the big screen with characters and something that you could believe. And it made him feel that, yes, this was the right way to go.
It seems like there was a lot of exchange going on between the films, and you know, like E.T. was made, and that was a puppet, and was there anything, you know, were there a lot of collaborations that kind of went from film to film, things you learned that you then carried to the next film?
I think only between The Empire Strikes Back and Dark Crystal. The other ones were definitely not an exchange that was anything that should have happened. You know, they're always, I guess, industrial spies. People who, you know, come around to the workshop and look at things and then go back and use them, or it happens on every film, but we weren't working with any of the other films.
So we're gonna have some time for some questions. Anything you can tell us, we're gonna kind of move off Yoda for a little bit, on what about, obviously, so Toby and his film with Labyrinth. One of my favorites. You guys agree with me? So, is there gonna be a sequel?
I don't know.
We would be amazed if there is one.
Yeah, we would be amazed. It would be fun, but probably not. But what we would like, and if anybody else would like to see it, you should just all tell someone. A stage show, a musical. I think that would be really, really fun. So, just put that out there. Well, we made Toby especially for the film. No, we wouldn't have had a show otherwise. No, he just happened to be the right age at the right time, and he already knew everybody, so he was really relaxed around everybody, all the puppets. He liked to play with them, so it was easy. The hardest thing was when we came to film the Escher set. Mm-hmm. When we started filming the rest of it, he was crawling, but he wasn't walking. By the time we got to the Escher set, he was almost running, and it was really scary because we hadn't thought that he'd be able to climb the steps, but he could, so he had to be on a wire the whole time. I mean, I was always within reach of him, just off screen, but we also had him on a harness the whole time because we just couldn't stop him. He just kept going.
And Toby's an amazing filmmaker in his own right. He won one of our jury awards last year for his film, and that must make you very proud as well.
Oh, absolutely. We're delighted. We just want to see We want to see him do more and more, and do a longer film. We want to see a feature film now, and then he can hire us.
I still think if you put up a Labyrinth 2 Kickstarter page, you'd probably get about $10 million in an hour. You guys agree? Yeah, I think it should happen. I think it should happen. So,
Yes, if everybody just gave $1, I'm sure we could do it. Okay, sure.
Yeah? Any questions?
Yes.
So I'm really interested in how you got into your line of work, right? Yeah. So I'll put it our first one when I was 9 in the theater. It's such a pivotal film for me. And I'm here with my 10-year-olds. They grew up on Labyrinth and Dark. They're very creative. And so I'm very curious about what your trajectory was.
Okay. My parents were both artists. My father was a sculptor, my mother a painter. They both taught. My father was actually the president of CCS, which is an art school in Detroit, where I grew up. So I grew up in an artistic atmosphere, but I always loved fantasy. And my mother read fantasy to me, from when I was tiny on. And I wanted to be able to play with the characters that were in the books that we were reading. And I couldn't get fauns and satyrs and fairies and things like that. You can buy them, so I made them. And I made them out of pipe cleaners, and I made them out of socks, and I made them out of whatever I could. I really started when I was about 5 or 6. And I wanted to be able to have them interact. And then when I went to art school, I was a theater major in high school, but then when I went to art school, I still just wanted to make dolls and puppets. I always wanted to do that. So, my teachers just thought I was crazy, and they thought I'd never get work doing anything like that. But I finally graduated with a degree in fabric design, and I went to New York with a group of friends and had a little exhibition in the loft, of just a Christmas sale of things in the loft that I was living in. And Jim Henson's art director, Michael Frith, came to the show. He was a friend of ours, and bought one of my little simple marionettes for Jim Henson as a Christmas present. And that's really how I got a phone call just after New Year asking me if I wanted to come and work on this new project. And I did something that you should never do, ever. I said, well, I'd love to come in, but I'm supposed to pick my mom up at the airport, so I don't think I can. And Michael Frith said, get someone else to pick your mother up at the airport. You come and have this interview. And, when I think back, I thought, really? I was going to not do that? So I did, and it was wonderful. And they decided they wanted me on the very, very small team. Brian and I came in on the same day. There were only 4 others of us. And we had 2 weeks of experiment, and just trying to figure out what this might be, how we would work it out. And it went from there and grew until we had, 350 people working on it? 360 some? Yeah. But it started out as a very tiny group, and we were very lucky because we had a lot of time, which is something you don't have anymore in films. Time is money, and people won't give it to you. But Jim wanted all of our creative input, and he wanted us to be able to figure out new things, discover things. And that really is, I think, why the Dark Crystal it looks the way it does and feels the way it does, because we were given the luxury of all of that. And that was wonderful.
time for a couple more questions. Sir, with the handmade Darth Vader shirt. How to draw Darth Vader. Excellent.
So it's all it works for me.
Yes.
I was speaking of what you were just saying about the movie, how you feel that it does. There are a few moments in that movie where there's an incredible puppetry happening for one shot, and then you never see that creature again, you never see that set again. And so, first of all, thank you for putting the detail
Oh, it was actually heartbreaking because you'd make these beautiful creatures or beautiful costumes. And the costumes were mostly made out of natural fabrics, a lot of silk, because silk comes in so many different weights and different textures, velvets. And then you don't see them. You do just for a second and they're gone. Or you see this beautiful creature coming out of something for a second and it's gone. Yeah, that's one of the things that we really, really felt bad about. But you know, you have to tell a story. So, and it wasn't up to us at all. We all railed against it, didn't we? Brian was really upset a lot of the time.
Any other questions? Yes, sir. You want us to come back?
No, I got it.
Okay, here we go.
So I read your Dark Crystal series that continued after the book, and I really enjoyed it. And what are you doing now? Just out of curiosity.
What other projects are you working on
Are you
now?
going to explore those universes more? Are you guys working on other ones?
Well, I was just one of the judges in the Dark Crystal fiction prequel books that are being written. And that was really interesting. We had a lot of entries for that, but the man who won it is going to be doing a series of 4 books, and they're really good. They're really good. It's going to be a lot of fun, I think. We also, Brian and I both judged a Dark Crystal creature competition, which again was fun and great to see what people came up with for that. So we're involved in that way. You know, about other films, who knows? There's no way of knowing. They keep saying yes, and then it doesn't happen. So we're doing other things.
Upstairs?
Yeah, questions on the balcony?
Okay, we'll do the person in over there.
Sure. So first off, thank you for being here. I know it's a long trip, and thanks. So you know, obviously everyone shares the same sentiment that you've grown up on your work. That's wonderful. So lest I be provocative here, if you had the technology of today, then how would you meld the two? What cool little things can you do now that you wish you could do then to make it easier but not lose the organic piece of it?
Brian, I think Brian and Toby, that's more a question for the two of you, really. I think what we would like to see is a combination of puppetry and CGI. It doesn't seem that so far CGI it's still not completely successful from our point of view, I think. It just doesn't have the heart. It really doesn't, but puppets do. And I think to be able to combine them, we could do many more things for less expense as well, if you could combine them well. And that's what we'd like to see, really.
Thanks for the question. Anyone else up there? I can't see anyone.
Yeah,
Yes, right
sure.
in the middle.
You had said that you were working with Brian on the Dark Crystal. Is that where you guys met, or did you both meet before?
So where did you and Brian meet?
Well, I mean, we actually met on the first day of those 2 weeks of experiment, where Jim brought about 6 people together, and we walked in, and Brian walked in, and he was this very, very shy little Englishman who didn't want to say anything and just sat there and sketched. But we loosened him up, and then he became lots of fun. After that, he was great. Because Brian did so many things. He didn't just design in 2 dimensions; he designed in 3 dimensions. And for us, the wonderful thing was he could come in and just sculpt a little something and say, "Well, look, I want to be like this." Or he'd go and just hot glue things together and make wonderful, wonderful objects and things that would then inspire bits of the film. So it was great to have him in the workshop, a real asset. It certainly wouldn't have been the same if he had just been, doing sketches and production work for us.
We have time for one more question. Let's make it good. Let's go with the girl right here. Go ahead.
Too much pressure.
I think the thing that was scary when we were working on set was that we knew that we had to make sure everything worked well. And if things broke, that was always a real problem. So we had to be able to mend things really quickly. And a lot of times things we just had to fix with pieces of tape or little bits of wire, because we couldn't take them back to the workshop. We were on set and we had to be going again within 5 minutes or so. So that was the scary part about working with them. They were fun to work with, but we had to treat them well, and also because their faces were made out of foam latex, it was really easy for them to tear or to get marked, and we had to be really careful with everything. So we all learned to treat them really carefully. Yoda was an interesting thing, because in one of the scenes, he was in front of a kind of campfire thing. And he got really dirty. If you look at the film, you can watch his face getting darker and darker, and it's because there's smoke dust all over it. And there's nothing you can do about that. Once it's there, it's there.
That was a great question. Let's give her a round of applause. So, yeah, that was an amazing question. So this is where we're going to present you with our Lifetime Achievement Award. And I always think, paper, like a plaque just doesn't work. And I was visiting a friend of mine, a writer, and her daughter had this amazing dragon, which I showed you the picture of, and she loved it. So I'm going to invite my friend's daughter up. She's going to introduce herself, and I'm going to have her give you this award. She sculpted a creature for you out of a book. So come on up. She's from West Lynn. She's 14, so everyone give her a round of applause. Go ahead and introduce yourself. This is Wendy Froud.
Well, my name is Anya Blankenship, and Josh here came and gave me this incredible opportunity to make you an award just to recognize your incredible work. And I feel so blessed that I was given that opportunity, so thank you.
So we have another Yoda, and there's a little room, and you could probably fit a couple people under there. So everyone, on behalf of the Portland Film Festival, on behalf of everyone in the city of Portland, I'd like to thank you for blessing us with your work. It has touched me personally, and I know everyone here agrees with me that you are a jewel, and we all love you. Thank you for making our childhood so amazing. Thank you. Wendy Froud, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Wendy Froud. So Wendy has to leave very quickly. I'm sorry, she's got another commitment. But if let's just give her another round of applause. And many thanks to her wonderful husband Brian and her son Toby, who's got a little baby.
None of this would have been possible without Brian. He is the most amazing, amazing artist, amazing man, an amazing husband. We've been together for 35 years, and I love him dearly. And then there's Toby. He's great too.
Thanks, Wendy. All right, everyone, have a great night.